totally valid. Sometimes you might purposefully take the standard error and redirect it. You can take and redirect that to output so you can see the errors on the screen. A lot of times there's going to be errors that are hidden. You might get a small just error, something happened, on your standard output that's displayed on your terminal. But there often are going to be situations where there are much more verbose errors behind the screen. You can't see these, but the application did generate these errors, and these errors can be helpful for debugging. So those errors can be often redirected. They can be put in a text file like a log file or something along those lines, or they can be redirected and dumped out to standard output so that you see the whole mess dumped to the screen. So, and as they show here, we've got many more different types of channels here, where we can read or write input, or read input or write output, um, from a process or an application. We'll see that here in a minute. So some of the easiest ways to work with these standard in, standard in, standard out, and standard error are shown here. So uh, we often, and this works in Windows too, by the way, we often will take the output of an application or a command, and we will dump this to a file. So, hey, something is not going right here. Um, I want to troubleshoot this further, but it's flashing the stuff up on the screen so fast, whatever. Okay, I'm just gonna dump this to a file and look at it. So if we type in our command at the command line, and then at the end of this command, we put a greater than symbol and then the name of the file we want to dump this information to, it's going to redirect. So this greater than symbol is called a redirect symbol. So we're going to redirect the standard output to whatever file we told it to dump that information into. So when we do this, a lot of times we're not going to see anything output on the screen. So we run the command, it's just going to return back to a command prompt. Well, where'd all my output go? All the output went into the file that we told this to put it into. So rather than dumping that output to the screen where we can see it, it dumped it all to a file. So if we use two greater than symbols, that's going to append to a file. So if we only use a single greater than, we're going to overwrite that file. So each time we use a single greater than, we're overwriting that file, overwriting that file, overwriting that file each time. And so we may not want to do that. There may be something important in that file. We've pulled down some good information. We don't want to get rid of it yet. So we can use the two greater than symbols back to back, and again, give it the name of the same file. And it's going to go out there to that file, and it's going to just add on to the bottom of the file. So it's not going to delete anything. So if we want to capture any errors from this process or application, we can use the number 2. So 2 and then greater than says that we want to take the standard error output and put that to a file. So now we're capturing those errors and dumping it into a file. Once again, because we're only using the single greater than symbol here, anything that was in that file is erased at this point. We're just putting in the standard error output. So you'll see this in scripting fairly often. If you have a situation where you run a command and the command generates a bunch of output, and there are some commands that do that just for whatever reason. The command creates a whole bunch of crap on the screen. Um, and I'm talking like sometimes thousands of pages of output, depending upon what you run. Um, we may not want to see all that junk. Um, it's great that you're showing me these errors, but these errors may not even be real errors. Hey, I can't find this file on this other PC, but that was an expected behavior. We knew that you shouldn't see that file on that other PC. We may be just checking to see if those files exist on 1,000 different servers out there and coming back and saying, yeah, it doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist. Whoa, wait a minute. There's one. Um, so in a case like that, um, we may want to just simply trash the log files. Because otherwise we're going to end up with just tons and tons and tons of error messages, in our log. So, in that case, we can take our um, to and greater than symbol and we can just dump it to dev null. Now, dev null is a device. Again, we're talking about the device directory here. So, dev null is a device where basically it's like a trash can. We can just anything we redirect to that dev null just goes away permanently. It's gone. So in this case, we're taking whatever was output, as far as an error is concerned, and we're just throwing it away. I don't really care about those errors. I understand this thing is running exactly the way I designed it to run, and never mind about the errors. So you might run a command then and do exactly this, where you redirect the standard error to dev null because you just don't want that crap scrolling through on your screen for, you know, hours or minutes or days or whatever. So here's another example. Um, we can output to a file. So we're taking standard out and we are um, putting it into a file. And we're also taking the standard error and putting it in the same file. Now, um, the cool thing about this, these combo commands like this, we're basically taking any output that may come from this process or this application. So when we run this thing, if it generates errors, if it generates output that's interesting, whatever, we're taking all of it, any information we can gather from this application, and we're dumping it out to a file. And of course, because we've only got the one uh, greater than symbol up here, we are overriding that file. So there are two different syntaxes to this. This one is more verbose. We're outputting to the file and then we're redirecting our standard error to our standard output. So that also goes into the file. But we can shortcut this and just say ampersand and then our greater than symbol, and then just tell it what file we want to go into. And that's going to take the sum of all the outputs from this processor command and dump it to the um, that file. So same thing as well here, but this is just appending. So if we give it a greater than, instead of overwriting the file, it's going to just append all this information to the end of the file. So like everything else, the order is important. Kind of like PEMDAS and algebra. So if we get the order here a little backwards, it's going to do some weird things. So this is going to take the uh, so we're taking this standard output and we're dumping it to a log file here, and then we're dumping the error messages to the same place. So this one does the opposite here. It's going to dump our error messages to our standard output, and then it's going to redirect our standard output to a log file. So, and they give an example here. Rather than using the above commands, they show some people will type something out that's very, quite a bit longer here. So we got the ampersand greater than output log. And that's going to, do this same thing up here. So that just makes it simpler. You know exactly what it's going to do here. So here's some examples. So they're running the date command that's going to print the current date and timestamp. And so they're redirecting that into our save timestamp file. So another example, they're using the tail command. Remember, the tail command is going to grab the last so many lines of text from either a text file or from a a command that's outputting things to standard output. So in this case, they're actually grabbing varlog dmessage. So they're taking the last 100 lines of it, and then they're redirecting and putting those last 100 lines into a file. So here's an example. They're running the cat command. So as we recall, the cat command can either concatenate files, or more commonly, it's just dumping whatever text file to the terminal so we can read it. So we're catting a script file here, shell script file, and a log file, and two more files, step 3, step 4, or whatever those are, probably some sort of text file or whatever, since they don't have file name extensions. So we're catting all these together. So that's going and taking those and stringing them in